Wondering why Wonder bought Grubhub? How restaurants are affected by Ozempic? And what is Serve doing buying an avocado cutting machine? That's all ahead on this week's Digital Restaurant. The Digital Restaurant works like this. We're going to ask each other 5 questions about headlines that affect the worlds of restaurants, off-premise, and technology, but in some way tie back to our book series, Delivering the Digital Restaurant. Are you ready? Let's go. Happy Monday, Meredith. How are you doing today?
I'm so good. How are you, Carl?
Good, thank you. I am actually having a week with very little travel. I've been traveling a lot. I've been to Boston for the first time. I was worried I was going to get lynched as a Brit, but the Bostonians were very nice to me. But did a bit of that and traveled over to Phoenix and Atlanta. I tell you, I'm getting all the air miles. How about you?
I was in San Francisco last week. It was lovely. I was at the Google Food Lab, which is just an absolutely amazing and inspiring event talking about the future of food.
But I guess we best move on to the first question because the number one topic that was being talked about, whether you were at the food labs or anywhere else, maybe RFDC last week, everyone has been talking about our first article, which is why did Wonder grab Grubhub? What's going on here? Tell us all about this one.
First of all, I love the title of the article that we put in the newsletter, which was Wonder buys Grubhub for a stunning discount. And
91%, right?
91% discount. That's amazing relative to what Just Eat Takeaway paid for Grubhub just a few years ago. Good on Wonder. They got a great deal. Now, I think at some point Wonder had been trying to build a marketplace. And so this for them is fantastic to pick up all the technology that has one, the network of drivers, a bunch of restaurants who are already signed up to it. And of course, Grubhub via seamless acquisition is quite strong in the New York area. So even though we talk a lot about how DoorDash and Uber have really gained a ton of market share over really the creator of this market, Grub, they remain very strong in the Northeast. So a lot of things to like about this business for Wonder. Now, Wonder is putting together an interesting collection of acquisitions, right? When you think about the Blue Apron acquisition, the Relay acquisition, and now the Grubhub acquisition, it feels a little bit like, I don't know, a collection of subscale businesses that are not growing quickly, going all together into Wonder. I don't really understand that for something that's supposed to be a very high growth business. But I think what you have to believe here is that the secret sauce is Wonder is going to put all of these things together in a way that creates a lot more value than any one of them could have on its own. And when we go back to Mark Lurie's vision of a super app for mealtime, certainly that would need some restaurants, that would need some drivers, that would need some meal kits. The only thing he's really missing is grocery, right? And of course, he hired Tony Hodgett, the head of Amazon Grocery, who's now his COO. So then that makes you wonder, wait a minute now, are they going to build something in grocery or maybe buy something there too? My prediction is that they will buy Fresh Direct. I don't know. What's your prediction?
You're going early on predictions. We usually do that in early January. My goodness, I'm not ready to do
Uh-huh.
predictions yet.
Yeah. What do you think they're gonna buy? You think they're gonna buy GoPuff or something like one of these rapid delivery?
Well, I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see if they try and create even more of a vertical representation, right? Because don't forget where they started out with all those trucks that they spent a lot of money on, right? I wonder
Yeah, so
whether
far
they
from the
whether
trucks.
they go back into that space eventually, right? Maybe one
Maybe,
of these robotics
maybe.
companies might be a player.
Yeah,
But
could be.
I don't know. I think the fact Mark was on a news channel earlier this week saying that he wants the company to be ready to go public, I think in 2027. The newscaster was questioning him about something like a 30 billion market cap and how can he justify that. And he says, well, I got 30 different brands all playing in different areas. So that's how we think about it. They're very bold. They're very good at getting the headlines. I think what I'm excited to see is how they can use the Grubhub platform to be able to take themselves to the next level using the information, the data that you can get from a Grubhub, and how they can perhaps create a differentiated experience to the DoorDash and Uber. Right? If they can do something in that space, which gives customers a choice around saying, why don't I try Wonder? Because I know it's different for X, Y, and Z reason. That might be something worth playing into because Grubhub was facing an uphill battle, and hence why that valuation being reflected in what Wonder were able to purchase them for.
Yeah, what a deal. And they said that Jet only got $50 million out of the whole thing because most of it was taking on the debt that Grubhub had. Wow. And it does certainly give Wonder a revenue to grow off of. Grubhub was like a $2 billion company, nothing to sneeze at. And Blue Apron was like a $100 million company. So they're picking up these pretty decent deals to grow their own top line, especially if they can weave them, as I said, together in a way that creates value.
I think the Amazon relationship is going to be super interesting. Maybe the Amazon fleet is the piece that plays into this as well. That partnership might prosper still in the same way as we talked about Grubhub and Amazon when that was first announced.
All right, this one has been speculated on a lot. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about it. What does Ozempic mean for restaurants?
Yeah, you might be saying, "Come on, Carl, this is supposed to be a digital podcast. What on earth are you talking about? The drug that's on everyone's minds these days, right? Ozempic." And it really just triggered for me because I saw this article in Franchise Times this last week. It was about just the increased usage of this drug and what its impact is on the restaurant industry. Of course, if you've been stuck in a cave and you don't know what Ozempic is, it's a medication which was originally developed for diabetes management, and it's gained popularity for its appetite suppressing effects, leading to significant weight loss amongst the users that tried out. This trend has raised some concerns for restaurants because reduced appetites may result in decreased dining frequency and smaller meal orders, and therefore affect revenue, as you can imagine. And the article I thought was quite interesting because it suggested that maybe this is a moment in time for restaurants to adapt their offering by thinking about smaller portion sizes, healthier menu options, maybe personalized dining experiences to cater to the changing consumer behaviors influenced by Ozempic usage. And maybe we'll also see a shift in the marketing strategies or even the types of restaurants that come about with the evolving preferences of health conscious diners. Yeah, I think fewer orders, smaller orders, maybe an impact off premise decline, specifically perhaps in those late night or impulse type occasions where clearly you don't necessarily get the same pang for hunger. Who knows? Maybe if the cannabis regulation starts to come in another direction, we're going to get these competing forces of the snacking thing that comes from cannabis versus the suppressant side of Ozempic. But I don't know. I think it's worthwhile all restaurateurs out there thinking about what does this mean for my menu, given the value challenge out there. Maybe smaller portion sizes, maybe the idea of a tapas type concept is something that actually plays into consumers' mindsets, whilst also addressing the health conscious customers out there as well. The main thing that I think it affects, obviously, fast food, known for its indulgent offerings, they may see greater pressure to introduce healthier items. Upscale, casual, the experiential dining may be less impacted as people still seek to have the ambience and the social connections and those kind of experiential moments. Maybe dessert and snack concepts, brands relying on indulgent purchases could face headwinds in this space. But yeah, I don't know. I think we've got to pair it alongside the other trends. The fact that we are seeing more people interested about the food that they put into their bodies, making sure we think about the messaging in our marketing from a healthier packaging, maybe the meal kit side of things of how that plays into it. Maybe we'll start to see some brands that actually direct their focus to support those people that are on those types of diets. You don't often see that, or maybe it will be an e-commerce offering. But I don't know. I'm intrigued to see what happens, but I'm pretty sure that every restaurant executive out there is aware of it and is making some thoughts around what they should do about it. What do you think?
There's a tremendous number of Americans who are even on it. That was a shock to me to find out how widely used the drugs actually are. And then I had heard recently that there is now become trendy to do microdosing of it for, we shall say, more superficial reasons. It could become very widely available. There are some scenarios where it becomes as widely used as statins, which later adult Americans are on statins post those drugs going generic to reduce their cholesterol levels. So if it became as widely used as those, especially after it goes generic, you might see a real impact, a real change in behavior.
All right, next up this week, we weren't there, unfortunately, but I think a lot of our friends in the industry were. RFDC often brings together the investors, the CFOs, the folks that are investing into things like technology in the restaurant industry. But you picked up an article that was talking about how some CFOs are now thinking about the whole idea of investing into tech. What did they say?
Yeah, this was an article that was highlighting a panel of CFOs who were talking about financing technology in the space. Shout out to Tiffany Furman, the CFO of the Habit Burger Grill, who used to work with me back in the day at Taco Bell. A very interesting article, which the tone of it felt like there was some skepticism. There were two quotes that were interesting here. One said, "We really have to believe that they being the employees, will make it part of their daily workflow." And that was from Potbelly's CFO, Steve Cerula. And then Tiffany said, "Is this tech the biggest thing for us to be spending our resources on and energy into launching?" Really putting a prioritization lens, I think, against the different technologies that are out there. Have to believe people are going to use it. Have to believe it's one of the biggest opportunities for the brand to go after. What they didn't talk about, at least in this article, and I don't know if it came up elsewise on the panel, but there's also been a lot of chatter in the CFO circles in the restaurant industry about how do you pay for all this technology? There's tons of subscriptions, tons of utility fees, commissions, all of these different things. Much of the technology promises some kind of payback, maybe in reduced labor costs or waste savings or increased check from the consumer. It's still really expensive, right? And I think the restaurant industry has evolved to a place where we've figured out how to pay for the big two, labor and food, and we've figured out how to pay for the more CapEx related items like equipment and signage and the build out itself. Those are like known things. But then technology is this weird unknown where everyone seems to be wondering, should the franchisor pay for it? Should the franchisee pay for it? Should the tech company pay for the support, or does the brand have to pay for the support? Should it be part of the franchise agreement? Where should it sit exactly? And there's a lot of different answers, brand to brand and technology to technology, about how that works. And I don't think the industry has landed on. It'll be interesting to see if the CFOs put their heads together and come up with the right way to do it.
Do you think the average CFO looks upon the investment in technology in the same way as they look in the investment into a new location?
I think it depends on whether or not they're building it in-house. If you are building it in-house, then you can capitalize the technology and you would think of it in very much the same way. But if it's a subscription fee that you're just paying from now until forever, you are probably not going to think about it as building a building. You're probably going to think about it more akin to marketing, which you pay for now and to forever. And I think that's where things start to get really messy because there's some upfront costs, there's some ongoing costs, there's some support costs. Who pays for all this stuff?
I think you're right. There's also some challenge now. We think about where we are a few years on from all this technology investment that's had to happen. We had the kind of spray and pray investment since the pandemic, and now a little bit of that is reeling back. But I bet a bunch of these CFOs are saying, I've paid out for all this technology and all these different systems and SaaS products, but we're still now dying in this kind of swarm of data that we can't control. So actually, is it helping me? Is it really helping us move forward in some way? And so I still think there's a lot of apathy associated to technology investment, but it's a different type of apathy to what it was 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's probably true. That's why I think this panel, the overall takeaway from that article was a tone of skepticism.
Hi, Carl here. Just as a quick reminder, please remember to subscribe, like, and give us 5-star for the Digital Restaurant Podcast. Your reviews matter. They really help us make sure that we're providing the right content that's relevant for you. Thanks for listening. Keep on watching. And as always, leave your comments below with questions, thoughts, and recommendations on what we can cover next time.
So our next question, kiosks again.
We're always talking about kiosks, aren't we, Meredith? And look, we said this, I think, at the start of the year, and it's time for us to take some credit. Look, kiosks and voice AI drive-through have definitely been the top 2 investments this year when it comes to technology. And I think most CFOs, even those that were skeptical on that panel, probably look upon this and say, yeah, I get it. The latest big chain that has talked about it has been Bojangles. They've partnered up with Grubbrr, and they're going to be adding these self-ordering kiosks across their 800 restaurants. Don't forget, we've talked about Bojangles because they implemented Hi Auto into their drive-through for the voice AI. I remember the Bo Linda story that we talked about some time ago. So clearly, they are in a place where they see the value of this. And they're not alone, of course. Shake Shack, it's been their largest, most profitable ordering channel earlier this year. They talked about that. Portillo's has been installing kiosks after an August pilot. El Pollo Loco expects to complete its rollout of kiosks by early next year. So not a huge surprise. From what Bojangles have said, it's helped them be able to reduce wait times. It's helped them to be able to improve order accuracy, and it's been able to help them improve average check size, with about 50% or so of the customers actually using it and engaging in it. I think the important thing there is to be able to say, this isn't about switching off other ordering channels. It's about providing the option for those guests that want to engage with the kiosk, that opportunity to do so. And in doing that, you divert it and divide the line of time basically required by the team to be able to service those. The thing that doesn't get talked about enough here, Meredith, is something, and I haven't seen it written anywhere, is this piece that we've talked about before about how it plays back into the loyalty space. You think about any loyalty transaction, typically across the world, apart from an e-commerce transaction where you have to give all your details up front, is that typically the loyalty card is shown at the end, at the point of payment. I wonder whether kiosks are going to get to a place where the loyalty ID, whether it be the card, the thumbprint, the face, whatever it is, actually the identifier, is actually shown at the start of the transaction. So that way, the customer, when they engage with these kiosks, can see their menu, right? We've always talked about your own individual menu coming up in front of you, your own individual promotions, your own types of things that are going to perhaps trigger you to purchase an extra dollar or two of items. That, I think, is the thing where these kiosks are going to go next. And I don't know, it's not been talked about. Maybe the tech doesn't exist yet, but I think that's going to be something that is going to be harnessed by folks like Bojangles and others in the years ahead. What do you think?
Absolutely. That's the way the Empower Delivery kiosk works, is that the customer identifies himself before the transaction begins. And that exactly unlocks all of the things that you're saying: past transaction history, personalization, offers, all kinds of things.
All right, let's finish it up this week. Wow. You get to talk about robotics and automation. My goodness, you lucky thing. I don't get this one. Serve. Remind us who Serve are, but they are purchasing the company that creates the automatic avocado guacamole making type machine.
Yeah, I thought this was an interesting one because Serve does delivery sidewalk robots. As a reminder, they were a spin out of Postmate. They went public in a SPAC earlier this year and are now buying up back of house automation, a company called Vebu, which has Autocado. And I think what's interesting about it to me is I don't think any of us would have said that a company that cuts avocados is going to be a huge big company, right? It has to either develop a whole bunch of other automation for restaurant or be bought by a company and be part of an automation stack, right? Like one of those two outcomes has to occur. Now, Serve, delivery sidewalk robots, and Vebu, back of house automation, those feel a little bit different. But I wonder if it's starting to plant the seeds of a roll up of automation of sorts in the industry. I think eventually we're going to see the emergence of a full automation type player. Now, will that be someone like a Middleby buying all these things up? Or will it be someone like a Serve growing into this full offering? I don't know, remains to be seen. But just for context, Middleby is like a $7.3 billion market cap company, and Serve is like a $350 million market cap company. If they wanted to, I think Middleby could just go out and buy all of the things that made sense and that restaurants really want. And of course, they have all the relationships, all the salespeople. Same is true for Wellbuilt. The other thing I thought was interesting about this article is that Buck Jordan, who was running Vebu, is going to go over and become the SVP of kitchen automation at Serve. Now, for those of you who are really into the insider baseball items here, who is Buck Jordan? You might remember him from Flippy. I think a lot of the players in this space end up going around and coming around.
This reminds me of like the F1 engineers and how they try and get the guys from one team to the next, because it's all the IP, isn't it? And so maybe it's not about the avocados at all. Maybe it's all about the talent, right?
I don't know.
The consolidation of automation could be an interesting one, but it's so weird to see these two very distinctive parties come together. And
yeah, they certainly have totally different businesses. So that was a little bit weird, but maybe it's the start of something.
Very interesting. All right. That is it for this week's Digital Restaurants. Let us know your views about Ozempic. Do you think that is going to impact your restaurant? And what do you think Wonder's going to do? Are they going to be different with the kind of GrubHub capabilities under them, or are they going to just be another kind of marketplace that competes against the big guys? Let us know your views in comments below, and if you've got any interesting ideas as to what you'd like us to cover on a future edition of The Digital Restaurant, do reach out. But we'd love to hear from you. But until next time, thanks for listening. The Digital Restaurant Podcast is available for you to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Watch us, rate us, and subscribe to The Digital Restaurant on YouTube, and follow along on all our social media digital restaurant channels. Thanks for listening.